Live on Facebook, but it's preparing to go there now. I filled out all the stuff. So if you're listening on Facebook, you may be picking up on us at this point. I'm not sure. We'll see. You should be coming in about right now. Sure. There we go. That's got to go off. And we should go Facebook. Welcome, everybody. We're going to talk about the resurrection of Jesus and gospel parallels, all four gospels tonight, kind of continuing what Gene did this morning and what we've been doing the last couple of weeks and looking at the gospel parallels with Jesus's crucifixion and the events leading up to it. And I'm welcoming Gene Martino and my brother Mike and Patricia, who are here. And we'll be starting in 3 minutes. It is 6:27. We will start at 7 o'clock.
At 6:30.
And excuse me, start at 6:30, correct. And that'll be in about 3 minutes. And Mike is having a technical difficulty with his camera, so he's trying to work on that right now. Meanwhile, I'm going to double check and make sure I can open my screen sharer with you. I see, got it right there. Everything seems fine here.
It's going out on Facebook, so that's good.
You see it on Facebook?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm gonna all right. I need for you guys to confirm for me that you can see a chart on the screen, that it's readable, and that you can hear me really well. Can you hear me really well? That sounds great.
Yes.
Well, that's where we're headed. All right. And we have 6:28, and Mike is still working on the fact that his camera is showing us nothing but something sort of greenish yellow gray. Oh, and there's his green screen, but his camera is not on. Mike, if you go to the general line where you can type in anything, there's a place where you just search on your computer, just type camera, and maybe it will let you go there and select a different camera. Just a suggestion.
So,
Okay.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Oh, I know, yeah.
If we lost a bulb up there too, that might have something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that better for you?
Mm-hmm. That better for you? Why don't you put it near me? I'll do it.
No, we're good.
You
Just
don't
waiting
think
for it to
so? Okay.
adjust.
Okay,
It's adjusting.
all right.
It's just slow. It just does it in small increments. So you can't see it at first, but now you can see it, can't you?
Yes.
You're darker and I'm darker
Mhm.
too. I was really bright a second ago. But if I take this off, boy, howdy, do we have a problem.
Mhm.
Watch it change. This is like a science experiment, everybody. Watch my forehead change. It's not changing.
Yes.
Well, we're doing weird stuff tonight. What did you put in my food? Okay, so Mike, as long as we can hear you, I think that's the most important thing. So I think we'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
If you continue to play with it, that's fine, but I don't want you to miss anything because of your contribution being important to us here. So if you get to a point where you can just let it go, or if you can't fix it, that's cool, man. I mean, as long as I can hear you, we're good. And the people on Facebook won't be able to see you, unfortunately, but on the recording, but we can all hear you just fine. That's the primary thing here. Plus, they're not going to be looking at you anyway when I'm wearing this. Everybody's going to be looking at you. Everybody's going to be looking at me.
Oh,
That's true.
Mhm.
I mean, between the weird shirt, which is unlike anything else that I wear, and now I've got a bush. This is Bert's bush.
Mhm.
It's plastic, so we don't have to water it. And I've got tape all over this because I screwed up the connection. And Patricia's looking put together as usual, and I'm trying to throw things together and keep up with her.
With green glasses.
With green, if these are her glasses, I can't see anything out of them. I'm just putting them up here because they look stupid. I'm in an honest mood. How does that sound?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Just feel like just calling it what it is. All right. So why don't we take a look at this resurrection business and let me show you the chart. I printed it out for Patricia because I think it's a little easier for her.
Yeah, I'm a visual learner.
Yeah, but she can write notes
Yeah.
on it and stuff like that. So she's got her own. But what we're going to do here is we're going to switch to, I'm going to share this screen with you again. And we are going to hopefully be able to go on here and
Can y'all see it?
Yeah,
Okay.
y'all can see it, right?
yes.
And I can see you all too pretty well, actually. So that's good. All right. So last week we were working on, who was present at the crucifixion and who took Jesus's body and who saw where he was laid and, who went and did what, when, and where. But, by the end of what would have been Friday, sunset on Friday. Now, because sunset on Friday is when the Sabbath begins, and it's also when this Passover seems to be beginning, depending which chronology you look at. It is one of those situations where they would want to get the criminals, the dead corpses off of the crosses. So this is one of the few places, if not the only place I know of in the Roman Empire where they made exceptions for crucified people being granted removal from the cross, because it was so against religious sensibilities of Jerusalem, and it was such a powder keg of religious fervor that the Romans were smart just to say, okay, whatever, you can we won't leave the bodies up there until they're eaten by carrion and dragged away. We'll let you have the bodies to get them off the cross before a holiday begins. And it seems like the Judeans agreed to this, and Pilate granted the bodies of Jesus as hoped for and expected and got it. But there have been only 2 crucified remains ever found, and I didn't know about one of them until very recently. I read about it in Archaeology magazine. And there was a nail through the heel bone, just like the one in Jerusalem. They put the nail through the outside of your heel, through your heel bone, and into either side of the post or cross, So they sandwiched your foot in there. It's sort of a different way to do it, but we found 2 crucified remains on this planet, and both of them were done that way. Get a clue. That's probably how they did it. That's the largest bone in your foot. It would hold your body weight. The front of your foot surely wouldn't. They've done tests with corpses that you just fall right off. It tears through the flesh on the front of your foot, but not if you got it through that heel bone. It's secure. You're not going anywhere. All right. So the question is, on Sunday morning, as the sun was coming up, who went to the tomb? Now we know it was women. All 4 Gospels say it was women. And all 4 Gospels agree that one of those women was Mary Magdalene. But after that, it gets a little weird. All right. Matthew says it was 2 women. He names Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. Now, Mark names Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James. There's more than one James, so we're going to have to, before you jump to conclusions. And then a 3rd woman is mentioned by Mark, and that's Salome.
We say Salome. And
so Salome or Salome, whichever you prefer, it doesn't matter. In English, we mispronounce everything anyway, so it hardly matters. But Salome, I think, is closer to correct. And at any rate, that's what I'm going to use, is Salome. And this is not the Salome, who danced at John the Baptist's death and Herod Antipas's birthday party. This is a different Salome. So maybe we can put it together when we get over to Luke. Luke says it was.
Her name was Herodias.
No, that's the mother's name. Mary Magdalene is mentioned by Luke, of course, and Mary, the mother of James, which is exactly what Mark says, Luke following Mark. And then Luke adds Joanna, and then Luke adds, and the other women. So we've got at least 5 women that went there according to Luke. So we've got Matthew says 2 and names them. Mark says 3 and names them. Luke says at least 5 and names what, 3? Yeah, 3. Mary, Mary, and Joanna. And then John's gospel doesn't mention any other women, just Mary.
Mm.
And you know, if I were seeing that for the first time, I'd be like going, what? I mean, that's pretty bad when we've got 4 gospels and they don't agree on how many women went there and who they were. Well, it shows you how independent they were. You know, I mean, they were independent in the sense that they did their own thing. They went their own way. And, you know, when they had independent sources, they went their own way. And when they followed Mark, they really followed Mark. I mean, here's Luke following Mark with Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, word for word. But then it goes different after that. Mark says Salome, Luke says Joanna and the other women. And we don't know why. We don't know why Luke broke with Mark here. If Luke had a copy of Mark, which I'll bet you money he did, since he copies him so well, and Matthew even better copies Mark, sometimes often word for word, it seems to me that what this says is that you know, they will use Mark as a source, but they will go their own way if they feel like they have another source that they like better, or that they choose for whatever reason, aesthetic reasons, theological reasons, to go with a different source. But they definitely, you could look at it like this, though. You know, you could say, oh, this is horrible. They don't agree on how many women. They don't name the same women. But you could look at it from this perspective, too. This is 2,000-year-old literature. They hadn't invented the biography really yet. In the sense that autobiography and biography, the way we define them today, this is ancient literary form called a gospel that most people can't even define. And the same woman is named in all 4. 3 of them name a second same woman. And then 3 of them agree that there were additional women. 2 of them agree that there were additional women. And so really, they agree a lot.
Yeah.
It depends on how you look at it. But it is kind of shocking, isn't it? That the women went there to do this, but we don't have agreement except for on the fact that Mary Magdalene went. It was the first few hours of that Sunday morning. And we're not sure, based on the other gospels, you know, who went with her, if anyone. You know, or that is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are these writers adding people on to, it was only Mary? Or did Mary come back alone at some point? You know, people start trying to fix this. But as Gene and I have suggested to you before, many, many times, and I know you don't need to hear it again, Patricia, you've heard it a million times, as of you might, but if we, you know, our sort of rule of thumb with the Gospels is to work with the one you're working with, you know, let the differences remain. And if you are preaching or teaching or studying Luke, just stick with Luke. You can note the differences in the other Gospels if there's a parallel in Matthew, Mark, or John. But if you're in Luke, I mean, let's go with that there were at least 5 women that went there that Sunday morning. Now, that's a real different picture. At least 5 women is real different than Mary Magdalene by herself alone. That gives you a whole different feel.
Yeah.
Now, 3 of the Gospels say there were more than 1 woman there. And of all the Gospels, John often will make theological decisions over and against chronological decisions or historical decisions. So it could be that John, while Matthew went to the trouble of having an extra blind man and an extra donkey, you know what I'm saying? Or an extra demoniac. John whittles all the women down to one woman and just lets her stand in for all of them as sort of the representative, idealized woman follower of Jesus from Galilee.
Yeah, that's different because he's usually the detailed one.
It is really interesting. I mean, I don't want us to feel like we're necessarily getting stuck here, but I mean, some of these events and actions are easy compared to this first one. This first one gives us a really fundamental thing to wrestle with. Who was there at the tomb that morning? Who got there first we know it was women. All four gospels say it was women. All four gospels say that Mary was among them. But beyond that, there's pretty broad range of possibilities here about who went to the tomb that morning. Any thoughts on this, Mike or Gino?
It's clear that the single most important person to be a witness is Mary Magdalene. Trying to figure out the why,
Yeah, she seems to have the primary spot. She's listed alone by John, and she's listed first by Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And they spell her name exactly the same way.
Was this the one who it's been said that Jesus had a girlfriend?
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
very much
Yeah, there's a
some theory
there's a
out there.
heretical Gnostic gospel, a later gospel that claims that Mary Magdalene and Jesus had children.
And then of course there's the Dan Brown book that we don't even want to talk about.
Well, that's exactly that theory of Jesus and Mary having children is the fundamental theory, wrong and completely wrong-headed as it is, and backward and a lie. Definitely based on that. The whole book, Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code, is based on the belief that the Grail is not the cup that Jesus drank out of at the Last Supper, but the Grail is the womb of Mary Magdalene who bore his son. And that's all made up. It's all baloney. None of it's in scripture.
Like salami and bologna.
Huh?
Like salami and bologna. Salome or Salome, or how you say her name? Salami or bologna. It's up to you.
Salome and bologna.
Well, I think so. I'm trying to think. As you asked the question about why she was the one that was named in all four gospels, I'm just wondering. Was it some rumor that, hey, this was Jesus's girl and they knew her? She was the more popular one. I don't know. We're guessing here. But well, there's so many different theories out there.
There are only 3 women followers on the road that are named, and 2 of them are named here. For sure, maybe 3. Okay, so Mary Magdalene's one of them that's named in Luke 8, 1 through 3. And Joanna is named. And the other one is Susanna that's named in Luke 8. So it's Joanna. Yeah, so two of these women are named elsewhere as being leading female followers of Jesus on the road. They're traveling with him full time and funding his ministry. Joanna and Mary are. Mary Magdalene. Not sure about Mary, the mother of James, but yeah. So maybe we should just put that on hold right there and go on to the next one. I think you all are still kind of pondering the possibilities there, and that's good. We can do that because we didn't resolve anything, and we just don't know why the situation is the way it is. Why are these 4 sources describing the same event, but describing who was there in pretty starkly different terms? To a degree. To some degree, don't you agree? It's a real difference to say that Mary Magdalene was there alone and 5 or more women were there with her. Well, at least 4. or more with her. Okay, so why did they go? All right, so this is not a right or wrong answer. This is what answer did this gospel writer give? So
Mhm.
Matthew says that they went, that Mary and Mary, the two Marys, went to the sepulcher to see it. That's all they said. They just went to see it. Mark, which is interesting because Matthew has a copy of Mark, and Mark says that they went to anoint him with spices, which makes perfect sense that they would go back and do that since they didn't have time to do it on Friday before the sun went
Mhm.
down, right? And that's specifically why they said, you know, they left him lying there because they couldn't finish. They couldn't finish burying him.
Mm.
He was lying inside the tomb mourning chamber behind the rolling stone, waiting to be anointed and slipped into one of the tombs and cap it. Because there are at least 6 in there. There are normally 6 or more in this style tomb,
Yeah.
right? 6 or more people can be buried in there at the same time initially. Later on, you can end up getting more people in there because you use bone boxes. And you can take the bones of someone whose flesh is rotted, place them in the bone box, and that makes room for you to put another recently deceased person in, which is the way they did it. They moved you into the bone box so they could have a place to lay the new body.
Okay.
That's a gruesome thing, but it was everyday work for people back then. I guess they didn't have undertakers because everybody had to take care of the burial of their own family. All right, so when did they go?
Well, Luke.
Maybe I should go back up to why did they go? I didn't finish, did I?
Mhm.
To anoint him with spices is what Mark said. Luke says to take the spices they had prepared, and John's gospel doesn't say why Mary went alone. It just says she went.
Mhm.
Okay, so when did they go? Matthew says after the Sabbath, which means, yeah, I mean, the Sabbath is going to be after the sun goes down on Saturday night. At sunset on Saturday, the Sabbath's over, but it's dark.
Mhm.
They have to wait for the sun to come up so they can so they can anoint his body. They're going to need light.
But it also says on the first day of the week
Yeah.
after the Sabbath. So I did a Sunday morning,
Yeah, that makes sense.
not Saturday night. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not Saturday night,
Mhm.
but Saturday night,
It's after I think they wanted to make clear by
That's-
the Sabbath.
yeah, that's the last day of the week. Sunday's the first day of the week. This is dawn. So Matthew says it's dawn
Mhm.
Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Dawn. Now, dawn to me is that time when it looks light outside, but the sun has not yet come above the horizon. You've got no direct sunlight yet, but the sun has come up enough
Yeah.
on the horizon that you have light.
Yeah.
All right. That's so she can see to walk without a lamp,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
She's waited till she's had a little light, I guess.
Mhm.
Okay, and then after the Sabbath, early on, very early, it says in Mark, after the Sabbath, very early, on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen. Okay,
Mhm.
that's interesting. So
Mhm.
if Matthew had a copy of Mark, that means that Matthew is putting the sun back down. Compared to what Mark said, he's putting the sun back down.
Why do you think Matthew had a copy of Mark's?
Because 90% of Mark is in Matthew's gospel, often word for word and in the same order. We talked about it a lot, why these are called the synoptic gospels. It's because it's pretty clear that most of Mark is in Matthew in the same order, often same wording. So the theory is, Matthew had a copy of Mark. Whoever wrote Matthew had a copy of whoever wrote Mark. All right.
I hear that. I don't know, but I don't know, because if he had a copy of it, then why would he write something differently?
Well, let's ask Luke that. Why would Luke write something different? We can look at Luke 1 and check that out. Give me a second. I'm hoping you can see this. Okay, can you all see my Bible Works program?
It's a little small, but.
No, I'm asking
Yeah,
them
they
if they can
okay.
see it.
I
No.
see the same thing.
Oh, let me share the Bible Works program.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, tell me when you see it.
I see it.
Okay, so Luke I'm suggesting Luke is in the same situation that the writer of Matthew is in. They both have a copy of Mark. But why, if you already have a copy of Mark, would you write a new gospel? Okay, that's Patricia's question, and it's a good one. So Luke answers the question why he wrote a gospel. Okay. He wrote, since many have undertaken to set down an orderly account of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed on to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. I too decided, after investigating everything carefully from the very first, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the truth concerning the things about which you have been instructed. So 50% of Mark is in Luke, a lot of it word for word and in the same order. So unless that's some sort of weird coincidence, my best guess is, along with most scholars, is that Luke had an early copy of Mark, and he used a lot of it, but he had a lot of other stuff too that he added.
Luke had Mark, or you
Luke
said?
had Mark and Matthew had Mark.
No.
That's why they're alike.
Hmm.
It's so funny because, I've said this so many times, and it's funny when I teach, with people, it's like, well, that's new to me. And I know I've said it 20 times.
Well, I'm hearing
It's
it a
not just
different.
you. It's not
No,
just
I'm
you.
hearing it in a different way as you make these new statements that I'm looking at it in a different way right now.
Yeah.
And I'm asking these questions
Good.
based on, well, if he had a copy, why would he write something differently?
Well, what did you
new?
hear from Luke? Luke just told us why he wrote something additional. He told us how he did it, and he told us why. I just read it to you. That's important. I mean, he's an editor. He's telling you he's redacted this thing.
I'm trying to see it.
Bert,
Yeah.
I remember in seminary that that Mark was definitely talked about, like, he was his words were kind of a basic foundation. It was more simple writing, very short statements, and just kind of making clear what he saw happen, and it was like the others kind of built on that.
Yeah, I think Mark was an early building block, and there were a lot of writers that came after them that used his material in one way or another. And I'm guessing, along with the rest of the scholars, that whoever wrote Luke and whoever wrote Matthew, those two gospels, they had copies of an early copy of Mark, and they were using it liberally. They were using it liberally. But they also had their own sources, and another source that they shared in common, in addition to Mark, that we call Q. It's a hypothetical source. But there are some stories and some teachings in Matthew and in Luke that aren't anywhere else, but they are almost word for word the same. How do you explain that if they weren't in Mark? Well, there must be another gospel out there, a lost gospel somewhere, if you will, or some other source. That's what the word Q stands for, is Kel. It's Q. It's short for source.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a nickname that the scholars gave to this hypothetical source that both Matthew and Luke had that no one else had.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how they can expound upon if they had a copy of Mark's writings, as Mike described it.
Because they're brief.
They're so brief,
and
his
they
more
lack
simple.
detail. It's sort of like having an X-ray. I mean, you've got the skeleton, you've got the structure, you sort of got an outline that there with Mark. And I think that you can make the argument, especially with Luke, that he used it as an outline, and then, but he took way more liberties with that outline than Matthew did in my experience.
It's
Matthew
almost.
tends to follow
Yeah.
more.
I'm thinking about writing a book, so if I write the first draft and I give it to you to edit, you're
Mhm.
going to add and make it, or, stretch, make it more meaningful in terms of,
Yeah,
you
if
miss
we-
this out, and then you send it to publishers and then they do their take. And,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
publishing by committee, it's always been such a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I get it.
And rewriting is writing, by the way. I can't tell you how much rewriting I've done. I've done way more rewriting than I've done writing in my life. A lot more
Yeah.
rewriting.
Yeah, I believe it.
And when you're writing, you just flow of consciousness. But when you come back, that's when you really start thinking compositionally,
Yeah.
and theologically about things and how it goes together. So where are we? Oh yeah, I want to close this one down if I can.
It's a stop share.
All right, and I want to go back to the other share if I can. I want to go to this one. And I'm hoping that you can see it. Can you all see that? Excellent. All right. So where did we get to? Oh yeah. So when did they go? Well, we got that it is toward the dawn on the first day of the week in Matthew, and it's very early before this on the first day of the week when the sun looks like had risen. Had risen. Well, why does he make it sound so early, maybe even earlier than the way Matthew put it, and then say, but the sun came up? That's interesting. Anyway, I'm confused. Luke, at early dawn on the first day of the week, and John said that while it was still dark on the first day of the week. Oh boy. So we already haven't even made it to dawn yet, and Mary Magdalene has already set out and gotten to the tomb and found it rolled away in the dark.
Here's
Wow.
here's what they all have in common. It was the first day of the week.
For sure, it was Sunday.
It was Sunday morning.
It was Sunday morning, somewhere near sunrise.
Which I think they were trying to make a point, if they couldn't go during Sabbath, it's like, this is urgent. I got to get to the tomb.
As soon as they had light, they're trying to get there first
Opportunity.
light.
Yep.
They're trying to bury their loved one.
Mhm.
They're just trying to do right by him. I get it. I wouldn't have looked forward to this chore. This is not something that you can erase from your brain once you've seen it.
Yeah.
Once you've buried a loved one with your own hands, which is what these women are about to do. I don't think you ever forget that, and you know that you're about to do something you can't unremember.
But did they go to bury him, or they went to just
Yes.
kind of embalm him with the spices, or to see him at the sepulcher? Where's the burial here? I don't see the burial.
Okay, so maybe they didn't bury him. What would they have done with him?
To see him and put the spices, to make sure he was.
So they put the spices on him, but don't put him in the tomb?
Well, wasn't he all, well, I don't think that's when they did it, eh?
Well, we know how the tombs back then worked really well. We've got a lot of documentation and a lot of scholarship on that. We know how those first century Hebrew tombs worked. We know who they were for. They were for the wealthy. We knew how they made them. They studied the pit marks. They know where they are. They know when they made them. They know the dates. They have the names of the people who were buried in a lot of these places because they would scratch their names on the ossuary boxes. We know a lot about tombs. So what did they come back to do on Sunday morning is the question. And I'm not sure that we've answered your question yet about what did they do? What are they there to do? It's now to see the sepulcher. I don't know. I don't know why Matthew backed off and said just to see the sepulcher. Maybe he was worried that, well, the soldiers are there because he's the only one that's got soldiers, right?
I was going to go I'm trying to go to the scripture here.
Okay.
To see exactly what it says in
Mark, what?
I'm trying to look here, but it isn't, this is something different. John talks about Mary Magdalene outside the tomb.
That's it. I mean, that's
John
John
20.
20, 11 through 18.
Let's see what
Yeah,
it
okay.
says.
All right. So so to anoint him with spices, Mark says, to take the spices they had prepared. Hey, what happened to the spices that Nicodemus brought when he helped Joseph of Arimathea get Jesus to the tomb? What happened to the 100 pounds of spices? I thought he left that in the tomb. I thought they already had that. Did they have to bring them? It looks to me like it says to anoint him spices. That makes sense if there are already spices there. But it also says to take spices they had prepared. So maybe they brought some extra stuff. Maybe they didn't know that Nicodemus brought spices.
Mhm.
Maybe Nicodemus did that and it never really happened because he needed Nicodemus to be in that part of the story with Joseph of Arimathea because he saw them as a pair theologically. I don't know. I mean, there are lots of ways you could spin this.
So listen, so what John 20 says, Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent
That's
over
on you.
into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken away my Lord," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked the woman, "Why are you crying? Who is it
Why are
you're
you reading
looking
this?
for?" Because we're trying to find out what they did. But this
I know,
was-
but I've got it all on this chart and you're reading from one
Okay.
gospel.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing missing here.
All right. I didn't realize you had it further down.
There's nothing missing here.
Okay.
So correct me if I'm wrong. John is the only one that has Joseph and Nicodemus anointing the body.
Correct. Not
So-
anointing the body, but
Yeah, put the spices on.
no, just,
Right.
I think they just took the spices and just put them in the tomb and sealed it. They didn't do anything with them, I don't think. I don't
They
think
were-
those men did anything with the spices except leave them there.
They wrapped his body with spices and linen cloths according to the burial custom of Jews.
Does it actually say that in John?
Yeah, John 19.
Okay, so we've got a problem.
Well, and that's why when Mary Magdalene comes in John, she has
It was
no reason to
already
do
done.
spices. It's already done.
All right, so what we have here is we have the men doing the anointing before the Sabbath
in John.
and women doing the anointing after the Sabbath. We have both.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Yep. And in
Oh,
Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there's no Joseph and
That's
Nicodemus
crazy.
anointing. That's
That's
how
crazy.
different they are.
So where's the break? Okay, who agrees with who? So Mark says it's definitely the women anointing. And John definitely says it's the men. And Luke says that the women took spices that they had prepared. And that's why they went. So that's agreeing with Mark that
Yep.
they took spices to anoint him. Matthew doesn't agree with either one of them, really. It just says they went to the sepulcher. It doesn't say anything about the spices.
No motivation.
In Matthew, it's all about the soldiers and the stone and the lightning and there's a earthquake and Matthew's gone in a wholly different direction. But I think the tension here is really between Mark and John. Luke agreeing with Mark that the women went there first thing in the morning on Sunday morning near dawn to anoint his body with spices, and Luke says they brought them. John's gospel says that let's double check it, Gene, with a couple of different translations. That just seems weird to me that I have not noticed this.
I didn't until tonight. New RSV has got the spices and the cloths in John. In Matthew, they wrap him in cloths, but it does not mention spices at all. But then Matthew doesn't mention the women doing spices, just Mark and Luke.
But then.
Holy cow.
But the angel,
Yeah,
with the angels too showing up and saying that, they're taking him away. So he wasn't even there when they came, even though they came to do the spices, to anoint him with spices.
Well, let's get this straight. The issue is who anointed him for burial? Will you read that verse that says the men did?
Yep, hang on 1 second.
And we know their names.
Yep, going back to John. Or I'm having to scroll too.
If that's John 19, that's the
Right.
one before the one I read that's in John 20.
Let me pull up the verses so I can give us a reference real quick. John 19:39. Nicodemus, who had first come to Jesus by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, weighing about 100 pounds. They, Nicodemus and Joseph, took the body, wrapped it with the spices in linen cloths, according to the burial custom of the Jews.
Read that one more time, that last one.
They took the body of Jesus, verse 40, and wrapped it with the spices in linen cloths, according to the burial custom of the Jews. Matthew says they wrapped him in cloths, but there's no mention of spices and no burial custom. It's just they wrapped him up.
Yeah, I'm right
It's
now.
amazing.
I mean, right now, all I can do is imagine, because I'm dumbfounded by this this revelation here. I'm guessing that to fix it, one might think in terms of, well, the men couldn't finish. They brought the spices, they took his body to the tomb, there wasn't enough time, the sun went down. So the women said, don't worry about it, we'll come back and finish. I mean, that would be one way to fix this, but we don't know. That's entirely speculation. Yeah. We really don't know what happened. What we do know happened is that John recorded that the men did something. That's Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea. Okay, they did something. And that something, according to John, was they wrapped him and the spices in the linen cloths.
In the burial custom.
In the burial custom of the Judeans.
So it may well be that for Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's the old philosophical question. If the men in the garden bury somebody and there's not a woman there to see it, did they do it right?
Oh, great.
I like that, Gene. I like that version.
You're messing with my head now.
So we had to come behind and make sure that, hey, he was wrapped right and had the right spices and all of that. Makes sense. But by that time, the angel was like, hey, Mary, he's not here. He's risen.
I did a military funeral one time. You know how they take their time folding up the flag?
Mm-hmm.
I know we're talking about the burial cloth,
Mm-hmm.
not flag, but it just made me think of it because, you know, before they hand the flag over to the widow or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they will fold the flag. And if it's not folded and look exactly like it's supposed to, he will slowly unfold it and make everybody their wait. And they will refold that flag, tucking and turning and tucking and turning. And it takes a long time sometimes. Mm. And this poor guy was nervous one time and they were doing it over and over. I felt so sad for him. He was sweating. Sweat was pouring down his face. We were at the graveside. It was summer. He's trying to fold that flag. But and the pressure was on. And the pressure may have been on here too. I mean, the pressure may have been on you know, they got the bodies off the cross before the sun went down, so they haven't defiled anybody or anything, including the city yet, but they're about to. Mm. You know, they've got to get him in a tomb fast. Sun's going down. It's Friday night, sun's going down. They broke their legs at what time did they say? 3 o'clock, so they'd make sure they were dead by no later than 5. Sun goes down 5:36. So, I mean, you don't have much time there to get him off the cross and to get him in the tomb. Fortunately, the tomb's nearby, but that's the point. It was an emergency. He just happened to have one nearby because he's a rich guy who lives in that part of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So he puts him in a tomb just outside the city wall, which happens to be near the execution site, which worked out nicely. and they were able to get him in the tomb before his body into the tomb before the sun went down. But that I think that what's being implied here could be implied here is that they wrapped everything together. The body, the spices, everything is wrapped and lying there as it's supposed to be, but they just weren't finished somehow. So the women are coming back because they know they have to finish doing something, because his body is not in that coquim yet, in the coke yet. Coquim are the actual tombs where they slide the bodies. I know I've showed you all pictures of this.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a Jewish custom too, that you've got to catch the blood and the bodily fluids and everything together. That's what the cloths are for, right?
It's
To preserve it all together.
It's not a speedy process, I guess,
No.
is what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes time to do this and to do it right. And it looks like to me, everybody pitched in and did what they could. It's interesting that 2 secret disciples are the ones who buried him and asked for his body publicly from, I mean, that's brave if you think about it. I mean, the nerve of Joseph of Arimathea, you know, maybe he was able to conceal that he was a secret follower of Jesus by simply saying, we need to get that body off the cross. May I get the body off the cross, Pilate? You know, he could
do the right thing.
played like he wasn't one of Jesus's followers and just doing his duty to get it off the cross because they have to get it off the cross. So he may have still been able to keep a secret, but he sure did get that body in the tomb in a hurry.
Did you say the other one was Nicodemus?
Yeah, it was Nicodemus.
No, he wasn't a disciple.
Yeah, he was.
Well, he was now.
He's acting like one.
And remember how that story
But
starts
he
in
wasn't one
John.
of the 12.
No, and
Came
neither
to
was,
Jesus at
neither was
night
Mary.
in the dark, right?
Yeah,
Double meaning. Well, he's out in the light now.
yeah, he's definitely out now because I think for both of them, there was some risk involved, you know, in burying him because I mean, sure, it's a semi-private act, but it's at a public place. There's a garden, there are tombs. It's at a crossroad right outside the city wall, city gate. I mean, it's a pretty public place.
So all this brings me to another question then. What time did the resurrection happen?
Yeah.
Because if they went that early, if it was dark still, or just sunlight just coming up, and he was already gone, I mean, what time did the resurrection happen?
It's a good question. We don't know. In fact, we don't have anybody who witnessed the resurrection. We have people who witnessed a risen Jesus, and we have people who witnessed an empty tomb, but we don't have anybody who witnessed Jesus actually rise. Did a beam of light come into the tomb? Was there an earthquake? Did the stone roll away by itself? Was there a blinding light? we really don't know. We know that something happened that was like lightning according to Matthew. If you'll look over there, but we haven't gotten to it yet. Can we continue with the Rolling Stone?
Yeah.
Okay, so on the Rolling Stone, the women witness an angel and an earthquake rolling the stone back. They actually see the stone being rolled back as they approach. So that's Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. That's Matthew's gospel, right? Mark says that the women worry about how they're going to ever move it, but when they get there, the stone's already rolled back. They don't see anybody sitting on the stone. The person they see is going to be inside, right? Okay, and then Luke says that the women find the stone already rolled away, and John says that Mary Magdalene finds the stone already rolled away. So the weird one here is Matthew, who has this whole angel sitting on the stone and the earthquake and lightning and guards. And a lot of scholars, and I'm maybe one of them, are pretty suspicious of this whole post the guard thing. It sounds a little too convenient.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds contrived, a little contrived, but I've been wrong before. I'm just saying.
But Tricia, think about this. In Matthew, stones rolled away. The women are right there. How did Jesus get by them?
Yeah, if the stone just is now rolled away, how'd he get out?
He didn't need the stone rolled away to get out. He was already gone.
Yeah.
That'll send some chills up your backside.
Or you can look at it the other way. Matthew has brought into this story something that's more contrived. And what really happened was they got there and the stone was already rolled away because Jesus rolled it away and he walked out.
He knew how to build things out of stone and wood. So
You think he could have managed to move a stone, right? I mean, they're not that big. Have you seen first century rolling stones? Most of them are pretty small. I mean, the
now
point,
I know Keith Richards has been around a long time. The first century, really?
yeah.
Well, Mark says the women, they worried how they'll ever move the stone. So it doesn't seem like it's small.
Well, I mean, you have a point, and they did vary in size from something that will look like something a little bit bigger than like something the size of a beach ball all the way to something the size of a kitchen table. But I guess it just depended. But remember, it is round.
Yeah.
It may be heavy, but it's round.
So
I mean, the whole point is
can roll it.
yeah, I mean, if you had enough people pushing with their legs, you can move the thing. So I think that the women were worrying about moving it was more about, I mean, I don't know if this is a sexist thing to say or not, but when the men did backbreaking, physically demanding, strong lifting, construction and fishing kinds of labor and farming, and women did not, and they're physically larger and bigger. So that's a sexist thing to say, but I mean, sounds like the women were wondering where they were going to find some men to roll the stone away from the tomb.
It's a possibility that the man could have rolled it away, or Matthew said an earthquake rolled the stone, moved
That's
the
not
earth.
the point. That's not my point. My point is that they are asking who's going to move it for us, meaning men.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, they didn't say that, but what do they mean? They mean maybe we can find some women weightlifters.
maybe.
At dawn on the first day of the week, maybe we can find some weightlifters out here in this garden. That'd be really, really strong women. We'll put an ad in the paper. We'll get.
Well, I mean, if they were wondering that, then it couldn't have been that small. I mean, it could have.
It was large
had
enough that they were worried. If they were
yes.
worried about it, then they were worried that they couldn't move it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how much spices are we talking about here? I mean, those spices are pretty expensive. If it's 100 pounds of spices, that's a ton of money. And the women were bringing additional. I mean, in addition to what it said Nicodemus brought, right? How many pounds was that? Gino, did you notice that? Is that John 11 John 19, where he brings spices to anoint Jesus's body? Right at the end of John.
100 pounds worth.
Yeah.
Mm.
A lot of spices. I mean, he must have been part Cajun.
Part Cajun.
Yeah, he had a lot of spices.
Oh.
Sorry.
I don't think we're at a crawfish boil right here at the moment. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Yes, please.
So who are these greeters that the women run into at the tomb? Matthew says that an angel descended. Okay, we get to watch one fly now, even though we don't see any wings. There's never a description of them having wings, but he looked like lightning. Wow. Dressed white as snow. He sat upon the stone outside the tomb, and only in Matthew are there guards posted, and they tremble and become like dead men. What a totally different direction Matthew takes that in. Listen to Mark and Luke and John. Mark says a young man in white robe was sitting inside the tomb on the right side. Remember, when you first walk in the tomb, there are mourner benches.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the shape of a U. And you could lay a body in front of you or to your left or to your right. Or you could sit down on the mourner's bench and mourn outside the coke of your beloved husband or wife's tomb, or your child or your mother or your father. And you can sit down at the mourner's bench just on the inside. It's sort of like a mourner's area or a preparation room, or both. It functions as both. All right. So young man in a white robe inside the tomb. All right. Luke says 2 men appeared inside the tomb in dazzling apparel. So they appeared. This angel descended. This young man was just in there. He didn't pop in or fly.
One.
Yeah, just one. And then these two appeared in the tomb in dazzling apparel. And then what does John say? After Peter and the other disciple John left while Mary was weeping, she stooped and looked in. Yeah, there's no angel or two men or whatever in John. So,
Till later.
okay, so Matthew, Mark, and Luke just don't agree very much, do they?
Not with the role, not with the.
Mark and Luke
not with
agree
the
more than
readers.
Mark and Luke agree a little bit more than Mark agrees with Matthew for sure. Okay, so what do these greeters say? So Matthew has his two. No,
Don't
it's
be
just one. Is it
afraid.
just one?
An angel, an angel.
Yeah,
One angel.
it's
Mhm,
one angel. Okay, so one angel says, "Don't be afraid," etc. And in
mhm.
Mark, what do we got?
A young man, light.
The
said,
young
"Don't-"
man sitting on the right said, "Don't be amazed."
Yeah,
And then Luke has the two in dazzling apparel who appear, right? And he says that they said, "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" I hope they didn't say it in unison, sort of like a Stephen King movie, like The Shining, like the twins at the end of the hall. Why do you seek the living among the dead?
Red rum.
That's creepy. Red rum, really. Okay, so let's hope it wasn't like that. And in John's gospel, Jesus says, "Woman, why are you weeping?"
that's a change.
Yeah. Okay, so wow. Don't be afraid, don't be amazed, and why do you seek the living among the dead? Those just don't agree at all.
I would, so that reminds me of when he told him to meet him in Galilee.
Yeah, that was when they were running away, though. That was on the road. That wasn't at the tomb. That was a little later.
That's when they were leaving.
That's when they were leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see what their reaction is. Matthew says that the women departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and they ran to tell the disciples. Mark says essentially the opposite. He says the women fled from the tomb trembling, astonished, afraid, and said nothing to anyone. And Luke says that the women returned and told the disciples. He doesn't make a big deal out of it, does he? He just says they returned and told the disciples. He doesn't even say they ran. And then John, we're dealing entirely with Mary Magdalene. It's a totally different scene where she's coming to recognize she's speaking to him at the tomb, not later on the road,
Mhm.
at the tomb by herself with the Lord, Mary Magdalene. All right. Totally different direction. All right. So let's scroll down and see what else we got. We got a little bit more. That will be the end of it right there. So Jesus's first appearance. Okay, so the first appearance in Matthew. Let's start with Matthew. I want you to be able to see the Matthew. There we go. First, well, you can't see it. Doggone it. You'll have to remember that the first column is Matthew, second is Mark,
Mhm.
third is Luke, fourth is John. I'm scrolling down to these two. All right. So his first appearance is somewhere between the tomb and the disciples, a room where the disciples are soon be hiding out in Jerusalem. And Jesus met the two women and said, "Hail," and they worshiped him. Okay, that's on the road in Jerusalem, somewhere between where Jesus is buried and where the disciples are hiding in a neighborhood. Somewhere in the city, he stopped and spoke to him. All right, Mark says that he doesn't appear to anyone. It's our oldest and best copies of Mark that have no ending. The women leave and are silent and afraid. That's how Mark's gospel ends in our most reliable and ancient copies. It has different endings. In fact, it has 4 different endings, and there are variations on those 4, and they are tacked on to later copies of Mark, not the earliest. So we really don't have a resurrection of appearance of Jesus in Mark, is what I'm trying to tell you. Those other endings of Mark weren't original. They're text variants. I think they're called interpolations, when you add something into the text that wasn't originally there.
Mhm.
Like you bring it in from the margin, maybe. Yeah. So What does Luke say? Luke says somewhere on the road to Emmaus, Jesus walked with two disciples, one named Cleopas. And at an unnamed place, Jesus is said around the same time to have appeared to Simon Peter. And these two appearances happen at about the same time, and it's unclear which was first. One is on the way to Emmaus and at Emmaus. The other one is probably in Jerusalem somewhere meeting with Peter. And we don't worry about Jesus meeting with two different people in two different places at two different times, because he is the Alpha and the Omega, in the beginning and the end, and time, it doesn't apply to him the way it used to anymore. Right, and then in John's Gospel, it says that just outside the tomb, Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene. We're not down the road somewhere. We're not walking to Emmaus. We're not in the city somewhere like in Jerusalem, walking on the street somewhere. We're still outside the city, just outside the tomb. Mary's crying. And she thinks he's the gardener.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's really strange how the other Gospels keep on moving forward, but John keeps us at that tomb with Mary.
Yeah.
He keeps us at that tomb with Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really his goal.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels the same way he keeps us with Lazarus, you know? He keeps us with Mary and Martha. They keep going back there, maybe 6 times I count. They keep going back there. They keep going to that place that has that empty tomb in the back, you know, Bethany. I don't know. It feels the same to me somehow. And we know that his raising of Lazarus led to his own execution. Because he did it publicly. Word got around, and then they said, that's the last straw. We're killing him for that. That's what we're killing him for. So John handles this really differently. So were there other appearances? Yes, there were. There were appearances to the 11 on a Galilean mountain, according to Matthew. We skip Mark because these appearances are in later writings by a different hand, tacked on to the end of Mark because they thought that it was a weird way to end a gospel. Thank you for giving me something from our nose, which is inexplicably running right now. Okay, and then Luke, to the 11 plus companions in Jerusalem behind closed doors, he appeared. And then in John's Gospel, he appears behind closed doors on consecutive Sundays, once without Thomas and the next Sunday with Thomas. And then he appears later again, a third time in John's Gospel on the Sea of Galilee, where he builds a charcoal fire. And I preached about that on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just want you to point out that Paul gives a list of his appearances that agrees nicely with and adds to what you've already seen. So the 2 appearances in Matthew are to Mary Magdalene and the other Mary as they ran from the tomb, and from to the 11 in Galilee. Here, all of those in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you can see up there. We add the ones from Acts. He appeared to some disciples while he was teaching during the 40 days of Passover and to Pentecost. He appeared to two disciples who witnessed his ascension. He appeared to Saul and to Paul on the road to Saul. He's also called Paul on the road to Damascus, although his appearance is not like the others. And then he lists all of these other appearances. These are other appearances listed by the Apostle Paul, that he appeared to Cephas, that's Peter first, then the 12, then to more than 500 believers at one time. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Over 500 believers at one time. Then to James, that's Jesus's brother. Then to all the apostles, which is anybody who followed him, basically from Galilee, anyone who followed him, men, women, apostles. And then last, he appeared to Saul, and that appearance we don't have a record of. We don't have a record of his first appearance, which is to Peter. We don't know what happened there. His first appearance to a male apostle, and then his last appearance is to Saul, who is later called Paul.
Mm.
Got it? All right.
And he ignores the appearance to Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, he ignores the appearance to, what do you mean he ignores it? Who does?
Paul in 1 Corinthians.
Yeah, Paul does not include the appearances to any of the women. That's really bizarre, but it's true.
He says first to Cephas. No, in John, it's first to Mary.
Yep,
It's not recorded at all.
yep.
And one other little thing, Bert,
Mhm.
when Jesus appears to Mary, he says, touch me not, right? Don't touch me. And then when he appears 2 Sundays later to Thomas, he says, all right, if you have to, put your hand in the holes. Well,
Yeah.
Those are pretty, well, I get you. That's always weirded me out too, but I mean, I'm weirded out less when I think about it this way. He used 2 different words.
yeah,
For touched, it means place your finger upon. Okay, to touch, like when you touch a scar or you
Mhm.
touch, a scab or a scratch. Or
it's not an embracement. Embracing.
yeah, no, clinging is when you grab somebody and you won't let go.
Yeah.
So I think Mary grabbed him and wouldn't let go, and he needed her to know that the resurrection, like every other sign, points to him and where he must go, and that is to his heavenly Father. So don't cling to me. Don't you can't hang on to me because I've got somewhere. I've got somewhere to go. I have an agenda now, and I have a job for you. So he's asserting his authority here and giving her a command not to cling to him, but go tell my brothers.
So this exegesis thing is really useful then.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't do exegesis, you don't know the story. And if you don't know the story, that means you don't know that there are stories. And what we have here is obviously descriptions of the same event, but boy, do the details differ a little here and there in interesting ways. And it makes you ask the question, why is this different? Is this because it was given to Matthew or to Luke differently than from the way it was given to Mark? Or did they make a decision to add or change something of their own authority? And we don't know in most cases, but it does give an insight into what's important to these writers. Clearly, Mary was way, way more important than anything else to John.
Mm-hmm.
John was probably Catholic.
Sure.
Mary was the key when it came to the resurrection. Okay, she's the key. She's everything. And she's not in the others. She is listed first. She's listed among several women, but none of them had a long time with Jesus except for Mary. And that's in John's gospel.
They heard the story their own way. They told their congregations their own way. It got recorded there its own way. So,
I can imagine the fear and trembling of being one of those writers. Let's imagine that I'm John. Okay.
Right.
And I've never seen Matthew's gospel or Mark's gospel or Luke's gospel. Let's say for argument's sake, I don't think he was familiar with them. But I think that a lot of the pastors, preachers, evangelists, and apostles back then were very familiar with the story in general. So it would not have been surprising for them to know these stories, including the Apostle Paul, who spoke very little about the ministry of Jesus. He didn't tell any of Jesus' stories, really. He mentions about the Lord's Supper. He mentions about the crucifixion, but very little else he writes about. That's because they know these stories, and these stories are beginning to be written down before their time. So the collection is happening. The collection is coming together. And the question is, if I don't know but what I know, with fear and trembling, I tell you what I know. And I hope you understand that if you get something from another source that comes from Antioch, and they say that it wasn't just Mary Magdalene, but there were 2 other women with her, well, take that for what it is. That source may be more accurate and detailed than mine, but then again, that source could be wrong. Think about the fear and trembling of these writers, the responsibility they had to posterity, to write this down and try to get it right and hope that they did when they didn't know for sure. I say they did a remarkable job. In fact, I've read a couple of scholars who argued or who have seen a study that argues that the New Testament, compared to other documents written in the same time frame, is 10 times more accurate than the average documents written in that day in terms of historical accuracy. It's much more accurate, according to what I read. Now, I have to take that with a grain of salt, because I'd have to go, I'm remembering this and I'm not remembering the source. I'd have to look it up. I keep pretty good notes, and this is amongst my notes for Gino for Heaven for Skeptics.
I could believe that. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Yeah, we can stop
I mean,
sharing.
so, I mean, yeah, I could believe that. But then, when it talks about, the Bible even being written by inspired man, by the Holy Spirit, I get that. And I can see why it outlasts so many other documents and books. It's confusing for so many, a lot get it wrong, but I can see why it has the impact that it does. I mean, even today.
Well, see, the thing is that, there's nobody on earth that right now can prove that Abraham Lincoln lived. You could just be like a flat earther and just deny. Every argument you make for why the earth can't be flat, I'm just going to deny it. It looks flat to me. Water doesn't curve. The ocean, you think water can stick to an upside down ball? What's wrong with you? I mean, you could be intransigent like that if you wanted to be and say, well, how do you know that that's, Abraham Lincoln in there? Well, and then let's exhume him and take a DNA test of his bones. Well, no, we can't do that. That would be disrespectful to his body. And he's a great American hero. I mean, how much proof do you need that someone ever existed is the question. And we have a lot of proof. We have a lot more proof that Jesus existed than Nero. So let's go ahead and get real. I mean, this person existed. It's just that people have an anti-Christian bias. There are people out there with really loud microphones who have an anti-Christian bias. And they're going to do and say anything to try to make the scriptures discredited.
Yeah.
But you know what? When you just read it, when you just read it, you don't get the sense that someone's trying to sell you anything.
It's like the song, you ask me how I know he lives. He lives in my heart. I can feel him. I know he's there. It's sometimes you can't even explain it. There are no words to explain. How do I know? But I know that I know.
So in your heart, because you feel something, you feel a relationship there of some kind.
It's yes.
But how do you know that book is telling you the truth that you believe?
Because it bears witness with
so the book bears witness to what your heart's telling you.
With my spirit, yes.
Okay.
You can read it, and it like sometimes it's like it's alive. It's coming off the pages. It's just so real. As I hear the word of God, we talk about the logos and the rema and all that. But
so
I know because of the relationship and I can feel.
So if I tried to stop you from believing, if I tried to stop you believing, the most typical path that a person would take who's trying to stop you from believing, an atheist who's trying to stop you, or an agnostic is trying to stop you from believing, the first thing they're going to say to you is, we don't even know who wrote the Gospels. And of course, you're going to come back because they think you're a fundamentalist and a biblical literalist and traditionalist. They're going to assume that you believe that, that it's inerrant, that it can't be wrong. They assume that you're a young earther, that the creation is only 6,000 years old. They assume probably that you're a flat earther. Anybody who's going to try to change your faith is going to go after the Bible. They're not going to go after your heart and how you feel about Jesus. They're going to go after your source. What's your source? Well, the sources are these scriptures. Well, they're going to try to discredit them. And so what I'm doing that's weird here is I'm using the very things they use to try to discredit the scripture to show you that this is the strongest argument for their legitimacy as sources, is that they don't necessarily agree 100% like it's a cheat, like it's a fix.
Yeah.
Right.
It's years ago, and it was written by people who weren't alive at the time in a language that they did not even speak back then, probably, most of them. So we're talking about Koine Greek after 70 AD.
Yeah, and Bert, it reveals too that the perspective, like, four different people telling a story, they're going to come at it from different perspectives. If they're, that's what happens in real life with the people we're with every day. They'll
They
talk
are,
differently.
they are, but please know that it's not personal, Mike, when I say this, because I got her for it last week, and I'll jump you for it this week. Now,
Okay.
it really isn't like we all heard the whispers, and the whispers got distorted down the line so that the last person doesn't hear exactly what the first person's tried to convey. That there is a sort of a corruption or a degrading of the message as telling over time, a remembering differently. But see, that's not what happened. The people who wrote it down weren't there at all.
Yeah.
It can't degrade because they knew nothing. Everything they learned was from written and oral sources that they were able to scrape together sometime between late 60s and late 90s AD, probably early 90s AD.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about here is we've got 4 editors who are making decisions about what to put in their gospel.
And
we
they
really,
give it,
we
and
really
each gives
don't-
it a
we
different
really don't-
slant.
we don't know how many sources they had. I mean, they really could have had 100. They could have had 100 different sources.
Right.
So Mark could have had 100 different sources. People writing this down here, people writing that down there, him remembering and recycling and remembering and recycling and memorizing and recycling all of these stories and retelling them, and some of them getting written down step by step, stage by stage, slowly over decades, until finally we've got these 4 collected and seen as authoritative by the church sometime in the early 2nd century.
Right.
In less than 100 years, we've got these 4 gospels that agree pretty well, but were written clearly independently from one another in some ways. But there is a dependency that we can say.
Yes.
There is
And we talked about Mark being kind of short and basic, just stands there as the story. But Matthew is very passionate and wants to use more,
and much longer.
Yes. And same with Luke. Luke is more verbal and goes into detail on a lot of things that Mark does not. And John is just in his own world, about a lot of things, talking about what's important to him from that story.
Yeah, this is definitely a unique voice. So let's look at it like that. Let's call these voices.
Yeah.
Nobody has the same voice. And so, we've got a soprano, an alto, and a tenor, and a bass. Let's say we've got a standard classical quartet here. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. We've got our quartet. We've got our 4-part harmony here. Okay. So do we harmonize them? Do we make sure that we never harmonize them? Or what do we do with this material that's helpful to us in understanding who Jesus is and what he accomplished and who these writers were and what they were trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a single piece of music here in 4 different voices? Do we have 4 different composers who have written variations on the same theme?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the best metaphor here is musically, but it seems to me it's pretty clear they're writing about the same person, the same events that happened at the same time to the same people. But boy, did they write differently. And boy, does John write differently.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd like to know what accounts for that. I'd like to know where they were educated and by whom. What if one of them was from Alexandria and was educated in that library that burned there? One of the ancient wonders of the world was the Alexandria Library, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what if, oh, wow, what if one of them was from Ephesus? The center of Christianity in Asia Minor.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? We've probably run out of time. I didn't check.
Yeah, we're out of time.
Yep.
Yeah,
Is
we're out of
anyone
time.
on Facebook?
Yeah, I noticed that Becky said something.
Maybe the women were just making sure
Making sure the men did it right. Yeah, I think,
You, Becky?
I think, I think probably the women woke up that morning and said, do you trust Nicodemus? I don't really know him very well.
They're gonna wrap it
Right.
right.
What about,
Let's go make sure.
Maybe- do you trust Joseph of Arimathea? Is he on our side? What's the deal?
Arimathea.
Arimathea, you were Appletina?
No, that ain't how you do it. This is how you do it.
Let me show you how, let me show them how it's done.
Hold my, hold my grail. I'm gonna show you one more time.
Yeah,
Does anybody else have anything to share before we go?
No, that was good, Bert.
Yeah, I don't think we exactly finished, but we were close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This has
that's
been
a
really
lot.
very helpful.
You know, I can't say off the top of my head which is more different. The 4 versions of the crucifixion or the 4 versions of the resurrection, but I think the resurrection appearances are even more different than the crucifixion narrative.
Writings, yeah.
I really think they're a little bit more different.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mike, I think you missed the last 2.
I did. I missed last time. I didn't miss the one before. I don't
Before
think.
that, okay, yeah, we finished up the crucifixion last week.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Both of these. I really appreciate these.
Yeah, we looked at the beverages that he was offered, the 2 drinks. And we looked at, the sponge and why does John say it was hyssop stick?
Mm-hmm.
And a little different details that are different. Did you go back and watch it or have you not seen it yet, the recording?
I haven't seen it yet, the recording, but I know some about what you're referring to with the sponge and all that.
Yeah.
I know that story.
What was really cool for me about last week was Gene and Patricia were on a roll. I was doing a lot of listening.
I'll go back and see it.
This week I talked too much. Last week I didn't talk very much at all, I don't think. I'll have to go back and check, but it seemed like y'all were carrying the conversation pretty well.
I don't remember, but but I really enjoyed these both these studies comparing the comparisons of both the crucifixion and the resurrection.
Well,
helpful.
Anybody who was with Gene this morning would have appreciated tonight. I think.
Which y'all talked about this morning. Oh, you're talking about this morning?
Yeah, he just read sections and we discussed who did what.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of just talked about it. We didn't have a handout.
Okay.
Yeah, we just talked about it, but everything that came up tonight came up this morning too.
Got you.
Mm.
Yeah, I had meetings this morning. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
And Gene, I appreciate your insights too about raising that about the men and what they did. That was very helpful too. I'm going to go back and read that.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what? I really think that if I could get another handful of people like y'all to understand the relationship between Lazarus's resurrection in John 11 and Jesus's arrest and trial before Pilate and Peter's denial and the fish on the beach in John 21. If you can get John 11, 12, 19, 20, and 21 in your head, you have a whole new purely Johannine view of what's going on with the death and resurrection of Jesus and how John views it. And he sees it really differently from the other 3.
Yeah.
It's my favorite view. I mean, it actually contradicts the others at a few points.
Yeah.
Not the important points, but surely, and stop calling you Shirley, I know.
Y'all take care.
You too.
Have a good night.
It's been rich.
Surely you shall have a good night. Thank
Shirley.
you. Bring me Shirley. We'll see y'all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sure.